Yeah, so there's Ya Yamaya was an most dear and the precious, kind, and which is fulfilling all the students, the friends, and the brother, sister, father, mother, all the sentient beings. Oh yeah, then I told last time that there here the Pavanka, the singing was the commentary of three principal paths to enlightenment. The three qualities, what makes things to exist is Tanyevi Shevala Tagwa Imbada, that which is known to the committed mind. Tell us, Tanyevi Tama Shinji, never. And that not only is known to the committed mind, but that doesn't receive harm from other valid committed mind. Then third one, it doesn't receive harm from the logic. Of the ultimate analysis. So it should be three, says. But as we did try to ask my questions and analysis last time, but however, I think that should have valid base, of course. You know, yeah. Yeah, of course, you know, for example, my brother's name is Sangye. Well, of course, I don't know his mind is Sangye or not. In Latin, the Sang, total cessation of all the obscuration, grosser. Ye is fully developed, total realization of the total completion of realization. So I can't say, but so his name is called Sangye. He was an ordinary being, sentient. Then you see, then there's no valid base. There's no valid base of Sangye. You know, so the dog you call Buddha, Sangye, then it doesn't have valid base. Or yeah. I mean, you make caca and then you call gold. No, that's not world best. So I think that definitely has to be world best. Then does it receive harm? Say logic. Then the
Yeah, it means like the analysis of the ultimate.
Yeah. The rigbe, rako rikasa rik, not rako.
It's like rikshe. Rikshe is the mind that analyzes emptiness.
No, rigbe, rikasa rik, not rako
It's like reasoning.
Reasoning of analysis, ultimate nature. So, if it receives harm, then that means that it doesn't exist. The rest doesn't exist. It's just harm from the analysis as a reason of the ultimate analysis. So if it's truly existent, then it receives harm from that. So so that I think that so usually the world base, there's world base and the valid mind. The labeling this, whatever is. So then that's how it exists. So there's a world base and there's a world mind level, merely imputing. Tibetan is a tokpe, par, not only taksam, merely, but par taksam, there's additional par. So I think it doesn't come in English that. Tibetan is tokpe par taksam. You see, not only taksam, but with par, so the additional, you see. Tokpe par taksam. So valid mind, the concept is powers from that side, the merely imputed. So merely imputed means it doesn't exist from its own side. So there's nothing, not even an atom, or even a smaller molecule, or lugtul, chutul, water, tan. So nothing exists from inside. So mean level, power. So there's I don't remember, or I might have heard, but I don't remember. Power, the side of the mind. Partaksam. So in Tibetan is partaksam. So there's additional power side from the side of the mind. So I think basically yes. Then is it that? Then is it that whatever it exists because that's world base and that's world mind. The merely imputed, you see. So that's how it exists in many. Listen. So, well, just a little checking. To where to be aware, to be known. So, where does the I exist?
Where does it exist?
Huh? Where does the I exist? Middle level I.
According to Jitsun Chuki Gyaltsen,
Mm.
it exists on the aggregates, but according to the seventh Dalai Lama, Kelsang Gyatso, it doesn't exist on the aggregates. So there's some disagreement.
That everything exists on its base is commonly known. That is commonly said in the text.
And I think His Holiness Seventh Dalai Lama says it doesn't. So there's some texts say it does and some texts say it doesn't.
So which one do you follow?
Well, we have Sarah Jace, we have to follow Jitsun Chuki Gyaltsen.
So is the I on the aggregate?
Yes.
Is your I on the aggregate?
Yes.
Which I? The real I or middle level I?
Merely labeled I.
Mm. Mm. Is the middle level I exists or on the form?
No.
I guess form.
No, it doesn't.
Does it exist on the I guess of I get feeling on the feeling of the I guess?
No.
Is the I, middle level I, does it exist on the I guess of cognition?
Discrimination.
Yeah.
No.
And does it exist on the composition?
Compositional factor.
Huh?
Compositional factors.
Yeah.
No.
Does it exist on the I guess of consciousness?
No.
So it doesn't exist. So therefore doesn't exist on the I guess.
Why?
No, I'm asking.
As a teacher. It does exist on the aggregate.
So that means it doesn't exist on the five I guess. One by one it doesn't exist. It's not there. So that means it doesn't exist on all the five I guess.
Why?
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking you. So that means it doesn't exist on all the five I guess. One by one it doesn't exist. The middle level I doesn't exist. So that means it doesn't exist. Also, all the five gathered, it doesn't exist on that.
It exists on the collection of the five, but it doesn't exist on the individual ones, because the individual ones are not a valid basis to be not the valid basis for the I.
Huh?
Individually, they do not compose a valid basis for the I.
Why they're not value based?
Because, for example, the feeling aggregate without the other aggregates cannot be a valid basis for the I.
Now, you see, after the death, this body is left out.
Right.
Suji Fungbo. So then only there's left only mind.
The left is only mind. Yeah.
So that time there's no I.
Why?
That time the middle level I doesn't exist because it didn't have all the five. There's only
It doesn't need the five.
the
but
body and mind, the only mind.
It needs the four. It needs the
No. So that time,
Yeah.
after the death, body is left out. I guess the form
Yes.
is left out. So there's only mind. So that time, the middle level I doesn't exist.
Why?
Yeah, that's I'm asking you. So I'm asking you. Because you said you need to be all the five.
Right.
See? So that's why after I guess the form is left out, then
Right, but
then that time the middle level I doesn't exist that time. Because there's no all the five. There's only mind.
it doesn't require all five, but it requires the latter four. The last
So
four.
I said, that doesn't require all the five.
Yes, I agree. Yes, I do.
So the middle level I exist, do exist. On the four, right?
Yes.
So does the middle level I exist? During the sleep.
Yes. Yes.
Only sixth consciousness functioning. Sixth consciousness.
That's right.
The middle level I exist.
Yes.
So it exists even there's only one consciousness.
That's right.
Huh?
There's still four aggregates. There's only one consciousness, but there's still four.
Yeah.
aggregates.
Oh. But the functioning is only the consciousness. The others don't function that time.
They're not functioning, but they exist.
Huh?
The story Pungpo, it's dormant,
What?
but it exists. The story Pungpo bakmanel gedegedu ini
Ah.
is.
Okay, so now let's see. So the middle level I exists on the value base 5, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it exists. So it exists. So it covers all the I guess. It exists on the fire, gathering of the fire gas, yeah? It exists on the gathering of the fire gas. Huh? It exists on the gathering of the fire gas.
Yes, duh.
So the middle level eye covers all the eye gas, or doesn't cover?
Doesn't cover.
Doesn't cover anything.
Duh.
All the five
Does not cover the five.
doesn't cover, so it doesn't exist on the five.
Why?
So then I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
Does
Does
cover them?
so it doesn't. So it doesn't cover all the five gas.
That's true. It doesn't cover them, but it does
It
exist.
doesn't cover it. It doesn't cover all the five gas. The middle of the eye.
Yes.
Oh. So it doesn't cover. So it exists nowhere.
Why?
Yeah. No, I'm asking.
Well, it does,
So,
it does exist.
so it exists nowhere on the fire gas. It exists nowhere on the fire gas.
That's not true.
Huh?
It
What?
does exist somewhere in the five aggregates.
Somewhere.
Somewhere, yes.
So it exists on the fire gas somewhere.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
So it is on the fire gas somewhere.
Yes.
Yes. So that means on the fire gas, it exists somewhere, and somewhere it doesn't exist. It exists somewhere, but somewhere it exists, but somewhere it doesn't exist.
Yes, I agree.
So that means middle eye is on the particular place of the fire gas.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, because you say somewhere it exists. Yeah, it's somewhere, somewhere it doesn't exist. Somewhere it means that there's a particular place where it exists. On the fire gas, there's eye. There's eye, middle level eye exists in one particular place. Because you said somewhere it exists.
It somewhere exists. It exists on the five aggregates, but other than that, we can't say any particular place.
Somewhere it exists, yeah?
Somewhere in the just by saying the five aggregates. Other than
Yeah, on the fire gas, somewhere it exists.
Yes.
So somewhere exists, somewhere doesn't exist.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So there's a particular place where it exists. On the fire gas, there's a particular place where the eye, middle level eye exists.
I don't agree with that.
Huh? Yes, it's completely become that. Because somewhere it exists. Because somewhere, I tell you, it does eye on this, it does eye, it does middle level eye, it does middle, this is the example. It does middle level eye exists on this box. So I said, does it cover the whole or not? He said no. Then you said the middle level eye exists on some part, on somewhere, the box, somewhere on this, it exists. That means somewhere it doesn't, somewhere it exists. Okay? So that's when there's a particular place where the middle level eye exists on this box. You see? It's very clear. It's almost like, it's the same thing. It's something, just names it, but means same. Yeah. Somewhere on this exists. Example. Somewhere middle exists on this, somewhere. So this means there's a particular place middle level I exists on this, on particular place. Right?
No.
Yeah, but this is the same name. Somewhere exists means here, there, there, here means somewhere it exists. Means somewhere it is, or inside, outside, somewhere it exists. Not all, but somewhere it exists. So that means on particular place it is. That's a particular.
If we say somewhere or nowhere,
Yeah.
they're mutually exclusive. Somewhere and nowhere are mutually exclusive. Somewhere.
Your name's
Gaji.
Gaji. So your name is Gaji. So Gaji is middle-level Gaji exists in the world.
That's true, yes.
Middle-level Gaji, does it exist in the West?
In the West? No.
Does it exist in the East?
Yes. We said Asia, right?
What?
Does Rinpoche by the East mean Asia or like the East side?
East-West. East-West.
We say East, yes.
Yeah, exists in the West. So, East, yeah. So Gaji exists, middle-level Gaji exists in the East. Middle-level Gaji, exists. Middle-level Gaji exists Nepal.
Yes. Yes.
Mid-level Gaji exists Kaban.
Yes.
And there's the middle-level Gaji on the Gaji's aggregates.
Yes.
But the middle-level Gaji doesn't cover the whole aggregates.
Yes, I agree.
Huh?
It does not cover the whole aggregates.
But it covers some part.
No.
Doesn't it cover even some
Cover
part?
anything.
Oh, it's hard.
It covers the
So-
cushion I'm sitting on.
So Gaji, some part of the aggregates of Gaji, so there's no Gaji.
Why? I don't
No,
agree.
I ask you before you said what was before?
I said it exists.
The I exists some part of the aggregate,
Does
on some part of the aggregate.
But it
Mid-level I exists on some part. Doesn't cover the whole aggregate, but some part. You said
doesn't
before.
cover any part, but it exists.
Oh, doesn't cover the ending.
Right. Well, the cover
So it exists nowhere. So the I, so that this is going. So the I doesn't cover. So the I doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Doesn't cover whole aggregate.
Yes, I agree.
Doesn't cover. Middle level I doesn't cover the whole exists. Doesn't cover the whole aggregates.
Yeah.
Doesn't cover.
Right.
Doesn't cover. So that means there's not. Doesn't cover. Okay. So that means there's not aggregates on. There's no I on the aggregates.
Why? I don't agree.
There's I on the. There's a middle level I on the aggregates.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, that is because some part of the aggregates there's a mid-level I. That's because of that.
No, that's not the reason.
Huh?
That's not the reason.
So on some part of the aggregates, there's some part there's no aggregates. There's some part where there's an I, mid-level I. There's some part with there's mid-level I like that.
No, it's not like that.
Oh, I said now it's totally different. So now the mid-level I, no way on that case. Nowhere.
Why?
Nowhere on that case.
That's not true.
Mid-level I is nowhere on that case.
No.
The mid-level I is on the. I said nowhere.
Right.
But he said nowhere. Mid-level I is nowhere on that case. Nowhere on that case.
No.
Huh?
No, it's somewhere. It's not nowhere.
It's somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, so the middle level I exists on that case somewhere,
Yes.
some corner.
Some corner? No.
Yeah, some part, on some part.
On some part?
The middle level I exists on some part of that case.
No.
Yeah, because somewhere on that case it exists.
There's no pervasion.
Yeah.
There's no pervasion. If it exists on some part of the, if it exists in the aggregate somewhere, doesn't that?
Yeah, so
part?
the middle level I exists on some part of that case.
That's not, no.
Yeah, so on some part of that case.
No.
What?
No.
Oh, middle level I, middle level I exists nowhere on the case.
No.
Huh?
No.
It exists on that case.
Yes.
Yeah, it exists. Middle level I exists on that case. So middle level I is on the case.
Yes.
On that case.
Yes.
Okay. On that case, yeah. So, so the middle level I is nowhere on that case. I mean, middle level I is not somewhere on that case. No, middle level I is not somewhere. Middle level. You already said middle level I is not somewhere on that case. You already mentioned that.
It's not, it is somewhere. It's not in any
It
particular.
is somewhere.
Yes.
I'm going back. So, I am going back as before. So is the middle level I exists? Is in the aggregates, aggregates, the category. Eastern part does it exist?
Isn't, which part?
Is the middle level I exist? Eastern part of the aggregate.
Eastern part of the aggregate.
Aggregate.
No.
Western part.
No.
Northern part
No.
is west, north, south.
No.
So that's for the aggregate is nowhere in the case.
Why?
So that means I exist. Middle level I exists nowhere in the case.
No provision.
So so doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. So it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist nowhere. So then doesn't exist nowhere. Then doesn't. That means that means the arcade is not there. Middle level arcade is not there. Middle level arcade is not on the arcade.
No, doesn't mean that.
Huh?
Doesn't mean that. It exists on the aggregates, but it doesn't exist in any particular part.
Mm.
When you say exists on the aggregates,
So,
it's different than
different
kind of meaning of the word on.
eh?
The meaning of the word on the aggregates, we said the word on, tengdu. It means something different than saying the pot exists on the table. It's a different use of the word on.
So,
if it exists on
okay.
the eastern part, it has to be kind of on.
mm. Mm. So, middle level eye doesn't exist any part. Okay, right?
Right,
Any part
right,
doesn't exist any part.
right.
So that means the middle level eye is not there. Middle level eye is not in that case.
Doesn't mean that.
Huh?
Doesn't mean that.
Look, on the Kapon Hill,
Yes.
on the Kapon Hill, there's elephant there. Is there elephant?
On the Kopan Hill?
Yeah.
No.
On the Kapon Hill. Oh, there's an elephant. There's no elephant.
No elephant.
Nowhere.
Not on the hill.
No, yeah, not in here.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, neither in a part. There is no elephant on the Kapon Hill on any part.
Right. Correct.
On any part.
Right.
On any part. So that means there's no exactly same. There's no elephant on the Kapon Hill.
Yes.
The same.
Oh,
There's no any part. There's no elephant. So there's no elephant on the Kapon Hill.
yes.
Those exact same.
It's not the same.
There's an elephant on the hill. There's an elephant on the hill. What are the differences? There's no elephant on the side of on any side of the Kapon Hill, and then so that means there's no elephant on the Kapon Hill. You said it's different. What's the difference?
The different meaning of the word on.
No. What's the? So I regard this example. What's the differences?
The difference is that the Kopan Hill is not the basis of designation for the elephant. So if we say the elephant exists on the hill, it has to exist physically on top of the hill. But if we say the eye exists on the aggregate,
I'm saying elephant, not in the side, not in the side of the Kapon Hill, not in the side of in the side of the Kapon Hill. There is no elephant.
That's right.
Yeah, so there is no elephant in the Kapon Hill.
That's right.
Those are exactly the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah. What's the difference? For that example, what's the difference? I'm talking about that example.
Well,
What's the difference?
We say that
But there's an elephant on the Kapon Hill. Is there elephant on the Kapon Hill?
no.
Yes, because you said before there's difference. So, okay. Because now what's the difference? So now in the side of the Kapon Hill there's no elephant. There's no elephant in the Kapon Hill. Now it's exactly the same. Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
Because,
No.
for example,
You said there's no elephant in the Kapon Hill. You said.
For example, if we say that the qualification president exists on Donald Trump, it's an attribute. So it exists on him in the sense of being an attribute. But it doesn't exist on him physically and you can't find it.
Right.
So if we say something exists on something, there's different ways to understand that meaning. If we say the president exists on Donald Trump, that's true because it's an attribute of him.
President exists. He's still president?
Unfortunately, yes.
What?
Yeah. For a few more months he'll be
They
president.
don't change until
Ah,
January. January they change.
I see, I do know.
They have
I thought maybe, I thought change it. Bill, what is it?
Joe Biden,
I thought he's president.
a few more months.
Ah. So on the side of the Government Hill, there's no, on any side of the Government Hill, there's an elephant, right?
That's right.
So there's no elephant on the Government Hill.
That's right.
So the exact same.
Not the same.
Yeah, I can say, you said before same, now that's those days better same. Yeah, the example, you see. On in the part of the Government, there's no elephant. Then there shouldn't be elephants on the Government. Of course. Right? Do you agree? Huh? Yeah. There's no elephant on the Government Hill. Huh? There's an elephant. Okay. That's the example. I'm using example. So that's total section. On any parts of the Government Hill, there's an elephant. That means there's an elephant on the Government Hill. Those two sections. So how can you say there's no elephant in the part of the Government Hill, but there's an elephant in the Government Hill? God say, God is that. That's the example. That's the example. So those are same or not?
It's not the same.
Huh? There's an elephant in the Government Hill?
No.
No. Then there's no any part of the Government Hill is the elephant?
No.
No. So that's exactly the same. So the any part of the Government Hill there's an elephant. So there's an elephant in the Government Hill. The same. How that can be different?
We label Kopan on the
How?
So Kopan
How that different? Tell me what is it?
we
What is the difference?
There's a difference. We say, I label Kopan on the hill. There is the word on when I say label Kopan on the hill is different than I say there's an elephant on the hill. I label Kopan on the hill, and therefore that label exists upon the hill.
No.
But I can't find Kopan on the hill.
No, Government Hill is the base.
Yes.
Government Hill is the place, base. So Government Hill. I'm saying there's no any part of the Government Hill there's an elephant. So that means on the Government Hill there's an elephant. Yeah, of course that's because yeah. On your aggregates, any side of the aggregates, there's no elephant.
I hope not.
Aggregates. There's an elephant, yeah?
Yes.
So, So that means on your eye gate there's no elephant.
Yes.
Okay, those are exactly the same. Those three are exactly the same. You see? Exactly the same. So now, on any of the eye gates, any part of the eye gates, on any part of the eye gates, sorry, there's no eye. There's a middle-level eye.
Not any part, right?
No, any parts.
That's right.
Yeah, there's no middle-level eye.
That's right.
So then there's no middle-level eye on the eye gates.
Why?
I'm the one who asks questions. I'm not one to answer. That's my job. That's not my job now. So you see, so that's the same. In any parts, there's no middle eye on any parts of the eye gates, anywhere. On any parts. And then there wouldn't be a middle eye on the eye gates. So same as the elephant. So elephant do not exist on any parts of the eye gates.
Yes.
So elephant do not exist on the eye gates.
Yes.
Do not exist on the eye gates.
Yes.
Yeah, so something there. So the middle eye do not exist in the parts of the eye gates. So therefore it doesn't exist on the eye gates. Same.
It's different.
What different?
Because we label I on the aggregates. We don't label I on a particular part of the aggregates.
What? So, yeah, so, yeah, but you see, so there's a middle level eye on the gates.
Yes.
Okay. Middle level eye exists only on the gates. Is the middle level eye exists only on the gates.
Yes.
Huh?
Only on the aggregates, yes.
Oh, middle level eye doesn't exist under the gates.
Under the aggregates, no. No.
If the middle level eye does exist, so does it exist inside of the eye? So it doesn't exist down below the eye gates.
No.
Huh?
No, it doesn't.
On down below the eye gates, the eye doesn't, middle level eye doesn't exist.
That's right. Down below, it doesn't.
So this the table the middle level table, middle level table. Does it exist under the base of the table?
No.
Under the base of the table. So actually when the table is upside down,
Yes.
this up, this front down is what's in there. So there's no table there.
There is a table there at that time.
So when the base is upside down, there's no table there. Because that's down below the base of the table. So when the table is upside down, there's no table. On table is only is this side there's a table?
Is that side the table?
Yeah. Is there a table on this side? The base?
No.
On this side there's a table?
No.
On this side there's a table?
No.
On that side there's a table, middle left table?
No.
So on this side Is there middle of table? Huh? Huh?
No, not on that side, no.
No, here.
Here, no.
On the, he said, down below, no. Here, no, here, no, here, no, here, no. So then I say, middle of table does exist on this level, on this level, on this base.
It does exist on the base, yes.
No, on this. Here it didn't exist.
No,
Down below.
no,
Here it didn't exist. Here it didn't exist.
no.
So, so therefore, exists only this, only the top part.
That's not true.
Yeah, you see, because no table exists. But table exists, middle level table exists on this. Okay, so I'm checking. You said on this, but then down below it didn't exist.
Yes, does not.
So here it didn't exist. So then that means also here, did it exist on this board? On this board?
No,
Didn't exist.
no.
Didn't exist. Okay, so that means that means so that means every pieces that here on every pieces table doesn't exist. Mid level table.
Yes, that's true. Doesn't exist in any particular piece.
Yeah. Okay. So this is not table. This is not table. This is not table. This is not table. So the whole basis is not table.
Yes,
The whole basis. This is not table.
yes,
Not table.
that's true.
Okay. So this is not table. So there's no table.
No, there is
Huh?
a table.
Where?
Where? In front of me.
From you. But there is no table on this.
No table on the table.
But there is no table on this base.
That's not true. There is a table on the base.
There's a table on the base.
Yes.
There's a middle level table on the base. But neither this nor that this even the whole group
That's right.
there's no table.
That's right. Yes.
There's no table here. There's no table here. There's no table. There's no table. There's no table. There's no table.
That's right.
So there's no table.
Why?
No.
No.
So there's no
There
table.
is a table.
So there's no table. But there's no table here. There's no table. No table. No table. No table. This board is not table.
That's right.
So there's no table. There's no table. Even this is not table. So there's no table. There's no table on this. So we all research. Nowhere is a table. Nowhere is a table. So nowhere table. Even all this gathered, there's no table. So there's no table.
There's a table.
Yeah.
There is a table.
Where?
Where? In front of me.
From me.
In front of me.
Why? Why? Why there's a table?
Why is there a table? Someone put it there.
Huh?
Somebody put it there.
Why there's a table in front of me? Why?
Why? can put things on top of it.
Why table exists?
Why does table exist?
Hmm.
To support things.
No. Yeah, but why table exists?
Because it is established by valid cognition.
On something.
On something.
Valid recognition. Established.
Sema.
Established in sky. In the sky.
Is the table? No, it's not. There's no table in the sky.
Huh?
There's no table in the sky.
I thought label in the sky.
Not labeled in the sky.
Okay. Mm. 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 So when the table, when this leg is burned, missing, is there table? Is there table on this?
When the leg is burned, yes.
Is there table on this? When the leg is burned.
Can it still stand up?
When the leg is burned. Managing my discussion. Well, anyway, I can put the table upside down, but that time there's no table. When the table is upside down, when the table is upside down, there's a table.
Yes, that's true.
Huh?
When it's turned upside down,
There's no table.
There's a table.
Okay, so when the leg is burnt, there's a table.
No, there's no table then.
Oh, when the leg is burnt. Oh, I see. There's no table.
No.
I see. I see. That's new one. So, okay. So, when I break piece of this, is it table?
Yes, there is at that time.
when I break this piece, there's a table.
Yes, that's true. It's still a table.
When I break this much, there's a table.
It's still a table.
When they break this much,
Yes.
when there's no leg, when there's
No
one
leg,
leg,
there's no
one leg is missing.
When one leg's missing, there's no table.
Okay, so so if it didn't have four legs, then it's not. If it didn't have four legs, then it's not table. According to you.
That's not true. It can something can be a table without having four legs.
Huh?
Something can be a table without having four legs.
Yeah. So, yeah, just even just shrugging this. Yeah, there's no leg. There's no leg, but it can still function.
Well,
There's three legs, so it can still function. So you said that's
it's still a table.
you said that's on the table.
If it can
But
still
I
function as a table, it's still a
but
table.
I still put things on top of the isn't one leg missing. Still I put things on this.
Then it's still a table. If it can still stand up and support things, it's still a table.
Yeah, so the khaza. So it doesn't depend on the leg, having four legs. I mean,
It doesn't necessarily have to have four legs.
okay, so yeah, so as long as it lifts it up, then it's okay. Yeah,
As long as it can stand up.
as long as it can lift up, then
Uh,
as long as it can stand up, it's a table. There's a table. Yeah, you know they tell you can have one leg.
yes.
You can have one leg.
That's
The
right.
table with one leg.
Yeah, there are some people-
The khaza.
yeah,
I remember in Italy one time.
yeah.
I don't drink tea by standing. I haven't got the habit. I don't say I never drink, but I think hardly remember. I mean, by standing drinking tea. So in Italy, at the airport, there was I think one leg
Yeah,
table.
they have these.
You stand in the drinking tea,
Yeah.
one leg. So, yeah, so I think that needs easy. Need to think. So leg need four. This doesn't need even one leg can do that. So, Yeah.
It can still be standing but not be a table anymore. Even if it's still standing, it's not necessarily still a table.
so you know, paper table.
Yes.
You can't put very heavy things, but you can put
Light.
light things. It's a table.
Yes.
It's a little table.
Still a table.
Oh. But you can't put those heavy things.
That's true.
Huh?
That's true. Doesn't mean
So,
it's
so
not
it's still a table.
still a table.
Yeah. So anything that's what so table. Okay. Isn't there table transport? Isn't there table that does support?
It can't support anything.
Yeah, table.
Is there a table that can't support anything?
Yeah.
Anything means anything at all, or maybe you can put a little piece of, like a needle on the table. very weak tables that can't support much. Yeah. Painting of a table is not a table.
What?
Painting of a table is not a table.
What?
A painting of a table, a picture of a table is not a table.
No, I'm not talking about that. So, yeah, there is a kind of table. There's a table. You put the table, but you put things in the clubs.
Yeah.
There's a table. You put things clubs. You see, there's a table, but if you put things clubs. What about that? Then getting in sport with the needle in the table. Using the sport needle.
That's not true.
Okay, so yeah. I did which one? I did one. Which one? Huh? I read them. The old people suffering. What's the name?
Duck.
Drug. No, not drug.
Penguin,
Penguin.
yeah, it's a penguin. Sorry.
The old people suffering so much with self-cherishing mind, the root of samsara, ignorance. The three persons' mind and so forth, full of hallucination with all the wrong concepts. I don't have these things because I found the right path which purifies that. I have the most incredible peace and I don't harm anybody. I feel I don't harm anybody. I feel a little bit shy because I have too much happiness than others. So I stay quiet myself. All right, okay. Due to all the past, present, future, merit of Clarity, Tira merit of Clarity by numberless and numberless Buddhas. All that dedicated for Jen Buddha, you know, heart in the heart, all the sins who has to develop. Chanjo, Samjo, Rimbo, Se, Maje, Parnama, Teju, Jim, Jeba, Nyamba, Mebai, Kone, Kondo, Pewa, there is them. Konde Ranshin Doza Meba Da Jundi Tende Rua Meba Ni Penza Game Jozo Chawai Udu Gonden Dobra Jinjelo. did all the part the best way to manage corrected by me, 3 times it is corrected by numberless sentient beings, numberless Buddhas. All the people who have a virus and who have come out to get virus, all those, and then may they never get reborn Lord illness. May they, all the disease, spiritual harm, and the cause, negative karma, obscurity quality from beginning as the birth. So immediately healed, did all the 3 times quality by me, sentient being, Buddhas. Immediately heal all the disease and those karma to get sick, immediately healed, and then also purify all the negative karma obscuration, and may all the wishes be succeed according to Holy Dharma. General Bodhicitta, and stop giving harm to the sentient beings. And only cause happiness, including enlightenment, to all the sentient beings. Sente neba tini abanyudo nele adadu jedre nena mandu batato jungwa mebarasho. Sente neba tini abanyudo nele adadu nena mandu batato jungwa mebarasho. Samje neba jinye abanye adaye jedaya nena man sure. And then those who dream body died, and all those then particularly died by virus, and all those made they never ever get reborn Lord. May they be born in the Pure Land where they can be enlightened. Or at least may they receive perfect human birth, mid-mind teaching, mid-perfectly qualified mind. The Guru revealing the administering path to enlightenment. Complete. And, may they please most holy mind the word friend and achieve full enlightenment as quick as possible. Then pray. These are all the past present which I made to Kulashban, I made to Kulashban, numberless and numberless. Tera Gundu Jawa, Sini, Moso, Zebe, Jave, Mabe Lamsan, Dini, Lakaje, Dawa Manju. Today we pray. Due to no, not one more prayer. Mejo Namdara Dame Timdan de Laje Jase Jebe Ning Doaje De Don Joge Rimni Nanju Rosan Javet and then Jawara. Wow. All the past best ways of marriage, Kulat by me 3 times marriage, Kulat by numberless, and then means numberless Buddha. Oh, may I fulfill the wishes of all sentient beings, more than wish granted jewel. May I accomplish all the sentient beings' expectation more than wish granting tree. Other. Whatever suffering the sentient beings have made happen to me, whatever happiness I have collected may happen to all the sentient beings. So please meditate first one, then second one. Did all the past, the best, and the future marriage collected by me. 3 times marriage collected by numberless sentient beings, numberless Buddhas. That which do not exist from its one side exists in mere name. That I who exist, do not exist from its own side, exists in mere name. Oh, it's the Buddhahood which do not exist from its own side, it exists in mere name. Oh, achieve the Buddhahood which do not exist from its own side, which exists in mere name. Dedicate, bring the sentient beings who do not exist from its own side, exists in mere name. To that Buddhahood which do not exist from its own side, it exists in mere name. By myself alone who exists, do not exist from its own side, exists in mere name. I Jamal Bavechita Jambada Kunda Sambo de Anjin Jeta Kunje Jason Da Lob Ching Gawade Da Tam Jerabdungo, the Zebe Jawadam Jejungo Wakala Chutunga Waye, the Gawada Diginja Sambo Jerabdungo. Jida Commander Payande Maluman College the